What's up guys, my name's Jack and today we're going to be doing Luma extraction inside of After Effects. Luma extraction is used for extracting color information or extracting things based on color information out of a clip or out of a plate. There's a lot of use cases you can use it for, but specifically today we're going to be taking the orange tip off of a gun, off of a prop gun, and blending it in with the rest of the gun to make it not so obvious that it was a prop gun. So I'm going to open a clip sent to me by Sean Muniz. He directed a music video that's Matrix themed, as you can see. We're going to open this up, make a new comp from selection. So as you can see, the orange tip it's pretty obvious in this clip. Right. So what we're going to do is today we're going to create a mask, rough mask over the front of this, over the barrel of this gun. And then we're going to use a couple different methods to extract color information out of that mask, leaving only the tip, only the orange tip, and then using that orange tip as an adjustment layer for the plate below it to blend that in. So let's get started. I'm actually going to trim this down a little bit, a couple extra frames at the end. All right, cool. So we've made a composition from the clip. We have it inside. Everything's good to go. We can mute that, we don't need that. First thing we're going to do is we're going to zoom in a little bit, hit H to drag your video around, hit V to go back to the mouse pointer, and then you can go up here, you can either click the pen tool or hit G, and we're going to make a mask really quick. Before we do that, actually let's duplicate that so we can actually see where we're working, and just make a rough mask. Make a couple different points though, because we're going to use these points later, just in case we need to do some fine adjustments to this mask as we keyframe it. So then we're gonna open this drop down, go into masks, and click this little clock right here that's gonna create a keyframe. And what we're gonna go do is we're gonna keyframe that mask all the way through this clip, but we're not gonna have to keyframe each actual frame individually. We're gonna do it an easier way. So we're gonna go to the last frame that is visible, which is right here, I believe. Yeah. And hit H to drag this around, hit V, oops. And we're gonna grab our mask and we're just gonna drag it down on top of that, right? And then we're gonna iterate that mask throughout the clip. So go halfway through, drag it, it'll automatically create your keyframe. Go halfway through, drag it, and we're going to repeat this process until we have a smooth mask that follows the front of the gun. Alright, so we've gone through. This looks alright. Actually, this one gets a little dicey right here. Everything else looks okay. All right, and then on the last keyframe, when the tip moves off screen, we're just gonna take the mask, drag it off screen. So now if we toggle the visibility, we have a mask that's just following only the tip of the gun, right? That's exactly what we want. Let's toggle that visibility again. All right, so next, what we're going to do is we're going to go up to Effects. We're going to go down to, where's it, Keying, and drop the Extract effect on your masked clip. There's a couple different ways you could choose which channel you want to use. Earlier when I did this for Sean, I found that red worked pretty good. Let's toggle the visibility of our base plate. Let's zoom in. Red worked alright. Because this is color graded, green might actually work well. But as you can see, it eats into the tip a little bit too much right there because of the shadows, because there's green in these shadows actually. Blue, just as bad. So we're gonna use red. Red seems to give us our cleanest extraction. So go through and drag it up until you have just the tip isolated using the black point, and then go to black softness and kind of feather that out just so it's not so sharp and harsh. And scrub through and see that's not good. You don't want any little leftover, really. So you can zoom out, scrub through, and it looks pretty good. But if you caught that, there's a couple problem frames right here. See these? So what we're going to do is we're going to have to actually individually keyframe the mask for these specific frames, which is better than keyframing all these frames, especially if you had a very long clip. This isn't a very long clip, but if it was, 20, 30 seconds, 10 seconds even, keyframing each individual frame would be tedious and just kind of suck. So we're going to zoom in on this, hit H to drag it up, hit V to bring back up the pointer. Make sure your mask is selected, otherwise if it's just selected on the clip, you can inadvertently drag this around. So just make sure mask is selected, that keyframe is good, go to the next frame. We're going to drag these points in. Really isolate the tip. That's looking alright. Go to the next frame. This one's going to require a little bit more work. This is why I said earlier, when you make this mask, you need to add a couple extra points, just in case you need to do some fine adjustments. That's looking pretty good. So the reason we had to do that actually was because it was passing through this little area right here. And if you can actually see, there's a shadow on that gun. So not only did the luminance values of those drop, the luminance value of the pixels around it were higher. Therefore, this effect didn't work. In theory, you could maybe add another extract effect to do that, but for this specific case, it was easier just to manually keyframe the mask for 2 or 3 frames. That's no big deal. Like I said, way better than keyframing even 38 frames or hundreds of frames. Alright, so let's get this up to 100%. Now if you scrub this back, toggle the visibility for your plate, you just have this orange tip that kind of floats around the screen, right? Looks good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to toggle the visibility of the plate again. We're going to take the extracted layer and hit Control-Shift-C. That'll bring up the pre-compose window. We're going to name this extracted tip. And make sure you click Move All Attributes into New Composition. What this will do is move all the effects and the masks inside the new composition, which is necessary for using it as an adjustment layer, and also adjust the composition duration to the time span of the selected layers. This just makes things easier in this case. So hit OK. Cool. Now we have a pre-composition that just has the tip. So we're going to hit adjustment layer for that, and what that does is it turns the tip into an adjustment layer, and whatever you do to that, we'll bring up exposure just to show you, whatever you do to that layer affects the layers below it without having that layer visible, right? So we're going to delete that. So on your newly created tip adjustment layer, let's go to color correction, go to color balance, HLS. You could also use Lumetri color if you wanted. I found this to be easier, less windows to mess with. So we're going to zoom in, and we're going to drop the saturation all the way down. As you can see, this isn't a perfect mask. We're going to deal with that in a second. or just kind of going to get the color where we want it. So we're going to drop the lightness down to kind of match the luminescence of the rest of the gun up here. That's looking all right. Then we're actually going to bring the saturation up a little bit, and we're going to change the hue to match the shadows. So the shadows kind of have a greenish tint to it. So that's pretty good. That's looking all right. Let's drop the lightness just a little bit more. All right. So, I mean, this isn't that bad. Oops. This isn't that bad. Honestly, you might be able to get away with this. But we can do better. So what we're going to do is we're going to click our adjustment layer. We're going to go up here. We're going to lock this. We're going to open this in its own window. We're going to drag it over to the side right here. And we're going to click back on this. So now what we can do is we can make adjustments inside of your adjustment layer that affect the adjustment layer while still looking at the overall composition. So let's zoom in on this tip a little bit. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to blur this. So go to blur and sharpen. You could use a fastbox blur, but we're going to use Gaussian blur for this. I probably mispronounced that. And we're going to adjust it. So essentially what you want to do is you want to adjust it to the point where, okay, so without the blur it has this harsh edge, right? We're going to feather that out a little bit so it's covering just a little bit more of the tip. Maybe let's just try 3 just to keep it simple. And it's still not doing exactly what we want to do. We want to take that blur and move it outwards, right? So we're going to go back into color correction, go to curves, and we're going to adjust the alpha of that. So go into curves, go to channel, go to alpha, and we're going to play with this and see what that does. It spreads the alpha channel out. So what you can do is to kind of really show you how this works, we're going to bump this up super high. So it's literally just moving the alpha channel out. So we're going to drop this down to around 10 actually for this specific use case on this clip. And maybe 5. Yeah, that's 10. You're going to play with this until you get a decent mask. Alright, so we have these curves. Everything's looks okay. Pull this back in just a little bit. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to hit Control D to duplicate this adjustment layer. Hit Control Shift C to make a new composition. We're going to call that Extracted Tip 2. Move all attributes, adjust composition, duration. Make this an adjustment layer, go back into this, untoggle that. So now what you've done is essentially created a second layer. And we can actually pull this over here. So now we have extracted tip and extracted tip number 2. So you can go ahead and leave the color balance the same on both of these. What we're going to do is we're going to go to extracted tip number 2. We're going to take this effect off. We're going to copy and paste it to the adjustment layer. So now it's kind of messed things up a little bit, but that's okay. leave that like that. Go into here, go to your extracted tip, into the second comp, go to fastbox blur. We're gonna adjust this. And what this is doing is kind of feathering it out some more. Now it's just a matter of matching the color and the luminance. You're just gonna mess with these values until you find something that's suitable for whatever you're doing. So that actually doesn't look bad. And what we can also do is we can go back into here and make some final adjustments to the overall mask. For example, one can bring it in more, one can bring it out more. We're actually going to drop this a little bit. Bring up the softness. And that's about it. If we want to go back into here, we can play with this some more. Go ahead and close that, unlock that. Play this back. It's looking all right. Much less noticeable than what we had originally. All right, that's pretty much it. If this tutorial helped you guys out, please drop a like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks.